I always believed my sister Jenna was my safest place. She was older, stronger, and the person I admired most in the world. So when life hit me hard, she was the one I ran to. But all of that changed the night I learned we were both seeing the same man. Even now, thinking about it makes my chest tighten. Stick with me while I share my story, and if it touches you, don't forget to support our channel by hitting that subscribe button, dropping a like, and sharing it with the people you care about. My name is Madison Clark. I'm 28, a nurse who works long shifts, comes home tired, and tries to keep life simple. Jenna, at 31, has always been the confident one, the sister everyone loved. Growing up, I copied her style, her attitude, even the way she walked. She protected me from bullies, helped me through breakups, and always made me feel like I mattered. That's why this betrayal cut deeper than anything I've ever experienced. When you trust someone with your whole heart, you don't expect them to hurt you in the most personal way possible. Back then, my life felt normal. I worked, came home, and shared most of my stories with Jenna. She always listened while making tea or folding laundry, laughing with me when something good happened, and supporting me when something didn't. I never once felt like she held anything back from me. I never thought she had secrets, especially not the kind that could destroy everything between us. I met someone during that time, someone who made my days feel lighter. I thought I finally had something good happening to me. I was excited, hopeful, and honestly a little proud. But before everything fell apart, I didn't know any of the red flags. I didn't see any warnings. I just lived my life, believing the world was simple and people were honest. Jenna was going through her own changes too, or at least that's what I believed. She seemed happier, more confident again, like she had her own good news she wasn't ready to talk about. I thought she was just taking her time. Sisters do that. Sometimes life feels too personal to share right away. I respected that. I trusted that. I trusted her. The truth, though, was nothing like I imagined. The night everything became clear started like any other night. I didn't wake up expecting my whole world to flip. I didn't think the people I loved most could be hiding something that would break me in a way I didn't even know was possible. But that night didn't just reveal a secret. It revealed everything, what love can cover, what people can hide, and how quickly trust can disappear when the truth finally comes out. And that moment became the start of the hardest chapter of my life. A moment that forced me to see my sister differently, and see myself differently too. I met Ryan Calloway on a day when I wasn't expecting anything special to happen. I had stopped by a small cafe after a long shift, just wanting something warm to drink before heading home. He was standing in line behind me, dressed neatly in a button-down shirt and holding a briefcase like he had everything in his life under control. When I dropped a few coins, he picked them up and handed them to me with a small smile. It was simple, but something about him felt different. We ended up sitting near each other, and he started a casual conversation. He told me he worked as a financial analyst downtown, joked about how numbers made more sense than people, and asked about my job without sounding bored or distracted. He listened in a way that made me feel seen. I wasn't used to that. Most men I met either pretended to listen or only cared about talking about themselves. But Ryan asked real questions, and he remembered the small things I said, like how I preferred lemon in my tea or how my feet hurt after double shifts. He had this calm confidence that made me feel safe. He didn't rush anything. He didn't pressure me. When he asked for my number, he did it gently, almost like he was giving me the choice to walk away if I wanted to. I didn't want to. I gave it to him without hesitation. From that day, he made things feel easy. He texted when he said he would. He showed up on time. He planned simple dates, dinners, movies, walks, nothing flashy but thoughtful. On one of our early dates, I mentioned I loved sunflowers, and 2 days later, a small bunch was waiting on my doorstep. Not a huge bouquet, not something dramatic, just enough to show he listened. After years of men who treated me like an option, Ryan felt like someone who actually chose me. He didn't pretend to be perfect, he just acted steady. He asked about my day, made me laugh at the right moments, and reminded me to eat when I worked late. It felt like he was slowly building a place for himself in my life without forcing anything. For the first time in a long time, I let myself imagine a future with someone. I pictured weekends in a shared apartment, quiet nights watching movies, maybe even a family someday. I didn't say any of this out loud, but the hope settled quietly inside me. Whenever we talked, he made me feel like I mattered. He looked at me like he saw something worth holding on to. And the more time we spent together, the more I believed I had finally found the kind of man everyone told me I deserved. I didn't know the truth then, and honestly, I didn't want to think about anything bad. I was just happy, and I held on to that feeling without questioning it. Looking back, I can't decide if he was too perfect or if I just wanted him to be. But at that time, all I knew was that Ryan felt like a dream I had finally been allowed to touch, completely unaware that the same dream was quietly turning into the worst kind of storm. At first, everything with Ryan felt smooth, but after a few months, small things started bothering me. They weren't big enough to call them problems, but they left a strange feeling in my chest. It began with his weekends. Every Friday afternoon, he became a little distant. He still texted me, but the messages were shorter, less warm, almost like he was rushing through them. When I asked if he wanted to meet up on Saturdays, he always had a reason not to: work deadlines, family visits, errands he had been putting off. I tried not to overthink it. People get busy. Life gets messy. But after a while, the pattern became too consistent. Weekdays, he was sweet and present. Weekends, he almost disappeared. He never ignored me completely, but he kept conversations shallow until Sunday night, when he suddenly became affectionate again. It felt like someone switching a light on and off. Sometimes I tried bringing it up gently. I asked if everything was okay, or if something was going on in his life. He always smiled in that calm way of his and said, "Just work stuff. Nothing for you to worry about." The words sounded reassuring, but the way he avoided eye contact didn't. His family life was another mystery. Whenever the topic came up, even by accident, he changed it immediately. If I asked about his parents, he said, "They're fine." If I asked whether he had siblings, he said something vague like, "It's complicated." I once joked that he must be hiding a secret family somewhere, and instead of laughing like I expected, he stiffened, then forced a smile. It felt off. Another thing I noticed was how he never answered his phone around me. If it rang, he silenced it instantly. If I asked who it was, he would shrug and say, "Wrong number," or "Just work again." Sometimes he would even step outside for a minute and come back with a completely different mood. I tried to trust him because that's what you do when you care about someone, but a small voice inside me whispered that something wasn't right. There were other little red flags too. Once, I asked if he wanted to meet some of my friends, and he looked uncomfortable. He said he preferred to keep things private until we were more serious. Another time, I mentioned taking a short weekend trip somewhere nearby, and he said weekends were always too busy for him. He didn't even think about it, just rejected the idea immediately. I kept telling myself that every relationship had strange moments. I reminded myself of how kind he was, how attentive he had been at the start. I didn't want to lose that. I didn't want to believe I had picked the wrong person again. So I pushed the doubts aside each time, choosing hope instead of truth. But deep down, the uneasy feeling stayed. It sat quietly in the back of my mind, waiting for the moment when everything would make sense. I didn't know it then, but the answers were already building in front of me, piece by piece, whether I was ready to see them or not. Around the same time things with Ryan started feeling uncertain, Jenna began acting different in a way I couldn't quite understand. She had always been confident, but now she seemed brighter, almost glowing. She smiled more, hummed while getting ready in the morning, and spent extra time choosing her clothes. It didn't look forced. It looked like someone who had something good happening in her life. At first, I thought she had met someone new. The idea made me happy. Jenna had been single for a while, and I always wanted her to find someone who appreciated her. When I hinted at it, she brushed it off with a small laugh and said she was just trying to take better care of herself. But the way she said it felt like she was hiding something, not lying, just keeping something close to her chest. She started leaving the house more often too. Quick trips, sudden errands, late-night grocery runs that didn't make sense. Sometimes she walked out dressed casually, but other times she wore perfume and outfits she used to save for special occasions. When I asked where she was going, she gave vague answers. Just meeting someone, or just some personal stuff I need to handle. I didn't push. Jenna had always respected my privacy, so I tried to give her the same space. Still, I couldn't help noticing how protective she had become of her phone. She used to leave it lying around anywhere, face up on the couch or kitchen counter. Now she kept it close, screen down, and whenever a message came in, she reacted instantly. Sometimes she smiled softly at her screen, then locked it quickly like she didn't want anyone to see. A few times she even stepped outside to take calls, lowering her voice just enough that I couldn't hear any words. I tried telling myself it was normal. People get excited when they're falling for someone. Maybe she wasn't ready to talk about it yet. Maybe she wanted to make sure it was real before sharing anything. I convinced myself she was just being cautious, the same way I had been with Ryan at the beginning. But the change in her energy was impossible to ignore. She dressed better, ate healthier, worked out more, and even wore makeup on days she usually wouldn't bother. She looked like someone who had a reason to try. And honestly, I was happy for her. I wanted her to have someone who treated her right. I just wished she trusted me enough to tell me. There were small moments that felt strange, though. Sometimes she returned home late and seemed flushed, almost guilty, even though she tried to hide it with excitement. Other times, she looked distracted, like something heavy was sitting in her mind. When I asked if she was okay, she quickly said she was fine, too quickly. Even with those small signs, the truth never crossed my mind. I never imagined her secret had anything to do with me. I never imagined she was connected to the same confusion I was feeling with Ryan. At that point, I still believed her happiness had nothing to do with my growing doubts. I thought we were living our own lives, moving in different directions but still close as sisters. I didn't know that everything she was hiding would one day collide with everything I was afraid to face. Not yet. The pieces were all there, but I wasn't ready to see how they fit together. I remember the night clearly because I had spent the entire afternoon planning something small but meaningful. Ryan had been stressed lately. At least that's what he told me. So I decided to make him a surprise dinner. Nothing fancy, just his favorite pasta, a dessert he once mentioned liking, and a quiet evening together. I even bought a new candle to make the house smell warm and comforting. I thought it might help us reconnect. An hour before he was supposed to arrive, he called. His voice sounded tight, almost rushed. He said he had to work late and wouldn't make it. I tried to hide my disappointment, telling him it was okay and that we could meet another day. But as soon as I hung up, my chest felt heavy. I cleaned up the table slowly, trying not to take it personally. People have bad days. Work gets busy. I repeated those thoughts like a mantra, but a small ache stayed with me. While I was putting away the food, I heard Jenna's bedroom door open. When she stepped out, I froze for a moment. She was dressed beautifully, hair curled, makeup flawless, a fitted dress she usually saved for special occasions. She looked nervous and excited at the same time. Like someone who was about to see someone important. I smiled at her and asked if she was going somewhere. She avoided my eyes at first, then said she had plans. Nothing more. She didn't offer extra details, and her voice carried a strange softness. I didn't want to pry, so I wished her a good time. But as she walked past me to the door, a strange tug pulled at my stomach. Something didn't feel right, but I pushed the feeling away. It wasn't my place to assume anything. She grabbed her purse, sprayed a little perfume, and stepped outside. A few seconds later, I heard a car pull up. I didn't think much of it until I caught a glimpse of the headlights reflecting through the window. Something inside me nudged me to look. I walked quietly toward the front window and pulled the curtain just enough that that's when my entire body went cold. Parked right outside was Ryan's car. I knew that car like the back of my hand. The slight dent near the rear bumper, the cracked corner of the taillight he kept saying he'd fix soon. My heart thudded so loudly I could hear it in my ears. I blinked, thinking maybe I was imagining it. But then I saw him step out. Ryan, standing there, checking his watch like he was waiting for someone. And that someone was Jenna. She walked toward him with a smile I had never seen her give anyone before. He opened the passenger door for her, and she laughed lightly, touching his arm as she climbed in. He didn't look stressed. He didn't look tired. He didn't look like someone working late. He looked happy that I stood frozen behind the curtain, gripping the fabric so hard my knuckles went white. I didn't breathe. I didn't blink. I just watched the two people I trusted most drive away together like it was the most normal thing in the world. A sharp, burning pain hit the center of my chest, spreading fast. All the little signs I had ignored, the weekends, the secrecy, the strange smiles from Jenna, rushed back at once. I felt sick, confused, and betrayed, but most of all, I felt numb. I couldn't understand how this was real. That night, everything snapped into place, but in the worst way possible. The truth wasn't a slow reveal. It hit me all at once, harder than anything I had ever experienced. And I knew deep down that nothing would ever be the same again. I don't know what pushed me to follow them, but my body moved before my mind did. I grabbed my keys, walked to my car, and drove slowly behind them, keeping enough distance so they wouldn't notice. My hands were shaking on the wheel, and my heartbeat felt uneven. Part of me hoped I was wrong. Maybe this was something else, something innocent. Maybe I had misunderstood everything. But deep down, the truth was already forming. They drove to a quiet part of town, to a small restaurant Jenna had always loved. I parked far enough away so they wouldn't see me and watched them walk inside through the large front windows. It took only seconds for the final piece to break inside me. They weren't acting awkward or cautious. They behaved like people who had been together for a long time. They held hands as they waited to be seated. Jenna leaned into him. Ryan brushed her hair behind her ear. He kissed her forehead, and she smiled like she belonged there. I felt my breath catch in my throat. It wasn't just betrayal, it was familiarity. A routine. A relationship that had been alive for longer than I ever guessed. I sat alone in my car for what felt like hours. I cried until my voice went hoarse, until my eyes felt swollen and tired. I kept replaying every moment with Ryan, every conversation with Jenna, trying to see where I had missed the signs. I wondered how long they had been doing this. Who started it? Who knew first? But I didn't have answers, only pain. When they finally left the restaurant and headed back to our place, I didn't follow them. I needed a moment to breathe, to calm myself enough not to fall apart in front of them. After driving around for a while, I returned home. Their cars were already parked outside. The lights were on in Jenna's apartment upstairs. I walked in without knocking. They were sitting on the couch, too close, too comfortable. When Jenna saw me, her smile dropped instantly. Ryan stood up quickly, like he had been caught in something he couldn't explain. I wasn't angry at first. I was too broken for anger. I looked at both of them and asked one simple question. How long? The room went silent. Jenna looked at Ryan. Ryan looked at the floor. Neither wanted to speak first. Finally, Ryan admitted they had been seeing each other for months. He claimed he didn't know Jenna was my sister at the beginning. Jenna claimed she didn't know I was seeing him until later. But neither story made me feel better. It didn't erase the hurt. It didn't erase the image of them together. They tried to explain. They tried to justify. They tried to say they never wanted to hurt me. But their words felt empty. I stood there listening, but I felt miles away, like I was watching strangers speak. The worst part wasn't Ryan. It was Jenna, my sister, the person I trusted most. She said she didn't know how to tell me, that she thought it would end on its own, that she didn't want to break my heart. But by staying silent, she did exactly that. I told them both I was done. With the relationship. With the lies. With the excuses. I walked out of the apartment and closed the door behind me, leaving the two of them in the mess they created. That night didn't just change my relationship with Ryan. It changed everything I felt about loyalty, trust, and even family. And deep inside, I knew this was only the beginning of the fallout that would follow. When I thought the worst part of the night was over, the truth sank even deeper in ways I didn't expect. After the first shock of the confrontation faded, I wanted answers. Real answers. I wanted them to say something that made sense, something that explained how any of this could happen. Instead, what I got was darker than anything I had imagined. Ryan was the first to speak. He looked nervous, almost cornered, and for once he didn't have that calm, collected tone he always used. He admitted quietly that he had been seeing Jenna before he met me. My stomach dropped the second he said it. All this time, I thought maybe they had crossed paths by accident. But he had been involved with her first. I was the second choice. The extra. Before I could even react, he added something that made my skin crawl. He said he liked the thrill. The thrill of juggling two women. Two sisters. He said it as if he couldn't help himself, like it was some habit he got caught up in. Hearing him admit that so casually made me feel physically sick. I realized he never cared about either of us the way we cared about him. We weren't people to him. We were entertainment. But then Jenna spoke, and her words cut deeper than his. She confessed she had found out weeks earlier that I was seeing him too. She saw messages on my phone one day, recognized his name, and instead of telling me, she kept quiet. She said she was scared I'd ruin it for her. That I always got things before she did. That she finally had someone who made her feel special and didn't want me to take that away. Her voice shook, but her excuses didn't soften the blow. It didn't matter how insecure she felt. She chose a man over her sister. She chose silence over honesty. She chose herself over our relationship. I remember standing there, staring at her, unable to recognize the person talking. This was the same sister who used to hold my hand on the walk to school. The same person who stayed up with me when I cried over breakups. The same one who told me she would always protect me. And now she was telling me she willingly betrayed me to keep a man who didn't respect either of us. What hurt the most wasn't Ryan's confession. I could walk away from him. I could delete his number and erase him from my life. But Jenna? She was blood. She was the person I trusted more than anyone. And hearing her say she stayed silent on purpose, because my happiness was inconvenient for her, broke something inside me that I didn't know could break. She tried to explain it again, saying she thought Ryan would end things with me eventually, or that she believed he would choose her. Every word made me feel smaller, like she didn't see me as her sister anymore, just competition. In that moment, I realized the betrayal went further than I had imagined. It wasn't just a messy situation or an unlucky coincidence. It was a choice, by both of them, to lie, to hide, and to let me walk blindly into heartbreak because it suited them. Standing there, listening to those explanations, I felt something inside me shut down. Not out of anger, but out of pure disappointment. I knew I could never see either of them the same way again. That night, I learned that betrayal from someone you love hits harder than any lie from a stranger. And the wound it leaves doesn't fade quickly. It changes the way you trust forever. Madison packed her things quietly and left the apartment that same night. She didn't argue anymore, didn't try to defend herself, and didn't waste another tear on people who had already shown her who they were. She found a small place on the other side of town and moved in the next morning, grateful for the distance. The silence felt heavy at first, but it was better than the chaos she had been living in. She blocked Ryan and Jenna on every platform. No messages, no updates, no explanations. She didn't want to know anything about their new life together. She didn't want to hear excuses or apologies that arrived too late. She wanted peace, and for the first time in weeks, she could finally breathe without feeling like her chest was breaking. Madison started therapy soon after. She knew she couldn't pretend she was okay. The betrayal cut deep, and ignoring it wouldn't help her heal. Her therapist listened without judgment as Madison explained everything, from Ryan's lies to Jenna's silence. It felt strange at first to open up, but with each session she felt lighter. She started understanding that the betrayal wasn't her fault. She had been honest, loyal, and loving. The wrong choices were theirs, not hers. Her friends stood by her side, checking in on her, taking her out for walks, movie nights, and long talks. They reminded her of her worth when she struggled to see it. Slowly, she rebuilt her daily routine. She focused on her work, cooked her own meals, and even picked up a new hobby just to keep her mind busy. The pain didn't disappear overnight, but it became easier to manage. She was learning how to live again without carrying the weight of someone else's deception. Meanwhile, Jenna and Ryan acted like they had won some kind of prize. They moved in together within weeks, posting pictures online and pretending their relationship was strong and meaningful. Madison didn't respond, didn't check, didn't even allow herself to think about it for long. Let them smile for the camera. Let them pretend everything was perfect. She knew the truth behind their actions. The relationship was built on lies, insecurity, and desperation. Nothing built on betrayal lasted forever. Madison stayed quiet, not because she was weak, but because she was finally choosing herself. She didn't need revenge or dramatic fights. She didn't need to expose them or send angry messages. She had walked away, and that was enough for now. Deep in her heart, she believed life always had a way of balancing things. People who hurt others eventually face their own consequences, and she didn't have to play any part in it. She focused on her healing, her peace, and the new life she was building from the ground up. She didn't know what the future held, but she trusted that it would be brighter than the past she left behind. And as the days passed, she felt a growing strength inside her, quiet, steady, and powerful. She wasn't done yet, but she was finally moving forward. Months passed, and life began to feel steady again. Madison focused on herself, her work, and her small routines, slowly reclaiming the peace she had lost. She didn't think much about Ryan or Jenna, believing that the past was behind her. She had learned to breathe again without their chaos weighing on her shoulders. Then, one afternoon, a friend called with news that made her pause. Ryan had disappeared. Not quietly, but in a way that left chaos behind. He had been seeing other women while living with Jenna, taking advantage of her trust and kindness. Madison felt a hollow mix of shock and disbelief, but no satisfaction. She didn't smile or laugh. This wasn't about her revenge. It was life showing consequences in the rawest form. A week later, Jenna came knocking on Madison's door. She looked smaller, not the confident sister she once knew. Her eyes were red, her hands trembling, and she could barely speak. She told Madison everything. how Ryan had emptied her bank account, how he lied to her about work trips and finances, how he vanished one night without a word. She begged Madison to forgive her, saying she didn't mean for it to go that far, that she had been foolish and blind. Madison listened quietly. Her heart still ached from the betrayal, but there was no anger this time, only clarity. She realized that forgiveness wasn't about excusing the behavior. It was about protecting her own peace. She could see that Jenna's pain was real, but it didn't erase the hurt she caused. "You made your choices," Madison said softly, keeping her voice steady. "I hope you learn from them. But I won't let this hurt me again. I won't let it in." Jenna tried to argue, to explain, to cry and sway her, but Madison stayed firm. She didn't need to lecture or scream. Her dignity was enough. She didn't have to show how much she had grown or how strong she had become, but she could feel it. Standing there, watching her sister broken by her own decisions, Madison felt the quiet satisfaction of truth. Karma had arrived, not because she wanted it, but because life had a way of balancing things. After Jenna left, Madison closed the door and leaned against it for a moment. She didn't feel joy or triumph, just relief. Relief that she had removed toxic people from her life, and relief that she had not been dragged back into the mess. She realized she had grown stronger, wiser, and more careful about whom she trusted. Life went on, and Madison moved forward with her own journey. She focused on building happiness from honesty, love, and integrity. She didn't need anyone to validate her, and she didn't need revenge to feel whole. The universe had its way of delivering justice, and she had witnessed it without lifting a finger. For the first time in months, Madison felt free. Free from lies, free from betrayal, free from the weight of other people's mistakes. She had her life back, and this time, she was determined to keep it that way. Madison spent the months after everything happened focusing on herself. She slowly rebuilt her life, piece by piece, starting with small routines and growing into bigger goals. She moved into a new apartment, decorated it exactly how she liked, and filled it with things that brought her comfort. Every decision she made was about her, not anyone else. It felt empowering in a way she hadn't experienced before. She began meeting new people, ones who treated her with respect and honesty. Friends, colleagues, even casual acquaintances who reflected the kind of energy she wanted around her. She learned to recognize kindness and sincerity, and to protect her heart from anyone who might try to manipulate or deceive her. Madison realized that part of reclaiming her life wasn't just walking away from Ryan and Jenna. It was also about choosing carefully who she let into her world. Therapy continued to help. Talking about the betrayal, processing her emotions, and examining why it hurt so deeply allowed her to let go of the bitterness without losing herself. She didn't forgive Ryan or Jenna for their sake. She forgave them for her own peace. Holding on to anger and resentment would only have trapped her in the past, and she refused to do that. Forgiveness became a tool for her own freedom, not a signal that their actions were acceptable. Every day, she felt stronger. Every decision she made reminded her that she could survive heartbreak, deceit, and betrayal, and still come out whole. She built boundaries and learned to trust slowly, carefully, and deliberately. Her heart remained open, but her judgment had grown sharper. She thought often about the lessons she had learned. Trust is precious, and betrayal from someone you love can cut the deepest. But she also realized that betrayal didn't have to define her. It didn't have to break her. Instead, it could teach her resilience, self-respect, and the importance of valuing herself above anyone else's selfish desires. One evening, sitting in her quiet apartment, Madison reflected on everything that had happened. The pain, the heartbreak, the loneliness, all of it had been intense, but she survived. She realized that walking away from those who hurt her had been the bravest thing she could do. She thought about Ryan and Jenna, the deceit, and the lies, but she didn't feel anger anymore. She felt clarity and control over her own life. Her mind settled on one truth, one she repeated to herself quietly every day. Family doesn't stab you in the back. And if they do, you walk away, no matter how much it hurts. That became her mantra, a reminder that love doesn't mean staying in harm's way. Madison understood that life was bigger than revenge, bigger than betrayal, and that her own strength and dignity mattered most. She had lost trust, but she had gained herself. In the end, Madison didn't just survive. She rebuilt, stronger and wiser than before. She had reclaimed her power, and nothing could take it from her again.